The film opens on a lonely highway at night, where a police officer is chasing a suspicious car through empty roads. The atmosphere already feels tense because the driver never speeds away or panics. He almost looks calm, which honestly makes the whole thing creepier. The officer finally forces the car to stop on the roadside. As soon as the driver rolls the window down, he quietly grabs a handgun and hides it beneath his leg before the officer can notice. What makes the scene even more unsettling is that the movie still refuses to show the man's face properly, almost like it's hiding a monster from the audience on purpose. The officer asks basic questions, but the man stays silent. When the officer asks for his license, the tension becomes unbearable because it feels obvious something horrible is about to happen. At that exact moment, another police car arrives nearby, and Officer Jane steps out. We learn she's the first officer's wife. She asks if everything is okay, but her husband casually tells her everything is under control and asks her to leave. Jane starts driving away, but while checking her rearview mirror, she suddenly notices the suspect aggressively arguing with her husband. Something about the body language instantly feels wrong. She turns the car around to return, but before she can reach them, the man suddenly shoots her husband dead. Jane rushes out and fires at the killer, but he moves frighteningly fast and disappears before she can stop him. Right away, the movie establishes this killer as someone terrifyingly smart, calm, and experienced. The story cuts to the killer hiding inside a cheap hotel room while a news report plays on television. According to the report, a serial killer responsible for 16 murders is still on the loose, and police have no leads. The killer quietly listens to the report without emotion, almost enjoying the fears spreading across the city. The scene gives a strange theory that maybe he actually wants the media attention because every crime seems carefully staged to send a message. Before sleeping, he hides a shotgun nearby in case anyone comes after him. The next morning, the killer stalks another victim through the city. He follows a woman to a pharmacy and waits patiently until she walks back to her car. When she enters the vehicle, she suddenly realizes the killer is already sitting inside waiting for her. Before she can scream or escape, he murders her inside the car. Then he calmly takes her pharmacy keys, walks inside the building, and steals large amounts of prescription drugs. Meanwhile, Jane is drowning in grief after losing her husband. But what hurts her even more is that the police still haven't caught the murderer. Soon news breaks that the killer has murdered another woman. Jane realizes this man isn't going to stop on his own. He's escalating. She decides she will personally hunt him down no matter what. The movie slowly starts turning from a normal serial killer thriller into something bigger, because Jane becomes obsessed with understanding how this killer thinks. While Jane investigates, the killer keeps murdering people across the country. His body count jumps from 16 to 32 victims. The speed of the killings makes the police look helpless, and honestly, it almost feels like the killer enjoys proving he's smarter than everyone chasing him. Jane eventually decides she can't sit behind a desk anymore. She starts working the case herself, even after the FBI officially takes control of the investigation. Because she's only a local officer, she has very little authority now, but emotionally, she's the only person truly determined to stop him. The film then shows the killer driving down an isolated road when he notices a stranded couple dealing with a flat tire. The husband is outside fixing the tire while his wife waits inside the car. The killer parks nearby, slowly puts on his terrifying mask, grabs a heavy metal rod, and walks toward the man. Without hesitation, he smashes the rod into the man's skull, killing him instantly. Hearing her husband scream, the woman jumps out of the car and sees the body lying on the road. She looks behind her and realizes the masked killer is standing there watching her. The scene becomes extremely intense because she knows there's almost no chance of surviving. She runs desperately onto the highway, but instead of escaping, she gets hit by an oncoming truck. The truck driver tries to avoid her, loses control, and the vehicle flips over before exploding into flames. Even the truck driver dies. The killer simply stands at a distance, calmly watching the disaster he caused like it's art instead of murder. Then he walks to the dead woman's car and paints a satanic symbol on it using her blood. At this point, the movie heavily pushes the theory that the killer might belong to some demonic cult or genuinely believes he's serving Satan through sacrifice. News about the massacre spreads everywhere, and the FBI forms a special team to investigate the murders. Jane meets with them and explains that the killer murdered her husband too. She says she understands how he operates and wants to help catch him. However, the FBI leader refuses her involvement, believing she's too emotionally attached to the case. Jane leaves furious and heartbroken, but one FBI detective named Rebecca clearly disagrees with the decision. She believes Jane can genuinely help solve the murders. Later, Rebecca secretly meets Jane at a hotel after work and illegally shares classified details about the investigation. Rebecca explains that although the killer travels constantly in his car, he also uses different hotels as temporary ritual sites. In many rooms, investigators discovered strange satanic markings painted on walls. Rebecca also says something very important. The murders are too carefully patterned to be random. This killer isn't just insane. He's following some larger plan. Rebecca takes Jane to one hotel room previously used by the killer after a murder. The room is covered in disturbing occult symbols. Investigators believe the killer may belong to a hidden cult. Jane searches deeper through Rebecca's laptop and finally discovers the suspect's real name, Richard. Together, they begin studying his movement patterns and trying to predict where he'll strike next. Just as they prepare to leave, Rebecca receives urgent news. A bombing has just occurred at a shopping mall, and investigators confirm the explosives match weapons previously stolen by the killer after murdering an illegal arms dealer. The movie slowly starts hinting that Richard's real goal may not simply be murder anymore. He may be building towards something catastrophic. The story cuts back to Richard preparing for another killing. He sharpens a metal pipe until one side becomes razor sharp. The next morning, he enters a church pretending to seek confession. He guides the priest into a private room, and while the priest is distracted, Richard suddenly drives the sharpened pipe through the man's throat. Then, in one of the film's creepiest moments, he drinks blood through the hollow pipe. This scene honestly makes Richard feel less like a serial killer and more like someone completely consumed by darkness. At the same time, Jane tracks Richard to another hotel. She asks the manager about him and eventually finds a guest registered under the name Richard. Jane enters the room carefully with her gun drawn. She checks the bathroom and finds a shotgun hidden there, but Richard himself seems gone. Then suddenly clothes hanging behind her move, and Richard attacks from the shadows. He nearly kills Jane, but she fights back fiercely. A brutal struggle breaks out across the room. In the end, Richard smashes her through a window before escaping by jumping out himself and fleeing in his car. Jane survives, but she's shaken badly because now she understands how physically dangerous Richard really is. After recovering, Jane thoroughly searches the room and discovers important evidence Richard forgot to destroy. Meanwhile, Richard contacts a man named Calvin, who tells him they saw his newspaper messages and believe he belongs to the same satanic military cult as them. Calvin invites Richard to join their group. Curious, Richard agrees and visits their isolated mansion. Inside the mansion, Richard finds dozens of people using strange drugs and worshiping Satan through bizarre rituals. But surprisingly, Richard seems disgusted by them. This becomes one of the movie's biggest twists because although Richard is clearly evil, he almost sees these cult members as pathetic imposters pretending to understand darkness. He quietly bonds with Calvin, who also seems uncomfortable around the others. Richard tells Calvin he's searching for a specific man, but only knows his occupation, not his location. Calvin promises to help him find a target. Later, Richard watches a television interview where Jane discusses the murders publicly. Oddly, he smiles while watching her speak, almost like he respects her for continuing the chase instead of giving up. The next day, he even calls the police station directly asking for Jane. When connected, he tells her he enjoys the fact that she keeps following him and promises to continue leaving clues for her. Jane is stunned because now she realizes Richard actually wants her involved in this twisted game. Back at the cult mansion, the cult leader Thomas drugs his followers and forces them into humiliating rituals. Richard watches silently, clearly disgusted. He realizes Calvin truly isn't like the others. Since Calvin already gave him the information he needed, Richard quietly warns him not to return to the cult meetings again. Calvin doesn't understand why Richard says this, but the audience immediately senses something horrible is coming. Richard grabs an axe and gasoline before returning to the mansion. He storms into the ritual room and massacres everyone inside with brutal violence. Blood covers the walls as he hacks through the cult members one by one. Finally, he buries the axe into Thomas's skull and sets the entire mansion on fire. The scene feels disturbing because Richard somehow becomes both monster and executioner at the same time. As Richard leaves, he notices someone outside aiming a sniper rifle through a window. Realizing it's Jane, he removes his mask, places it on a stick near the glass, and hides behind a wall. Jane fires instantly, destroying the mask. Richard escapes during the distraction. Jane chases him in her car, but Richard crashes into her vehicle hard enough to send it into a ditch before escaping again. Jane becomes furious because the FBI ignored her warnings and arrived too late once again. Meanwhile, Richard moves toward the final phase of his plan. Using information Calvin provided, he tracks down a man named Bill, who manages the 3 Mile Island nuclear facility. Richard breaks into Bill's home and prepares explosives in the basement while waiting for him to return. That evening, Bill and his wife arrive home and discover Richard inside. Richard holds him hostage and threatens to kill Bill's wife unless Bill obeys him. Elsewhere, Jane follows another clue left by Richard inside an abandoned building. Above a window, she notices the words 3 miles. At first she's confused, but then realizes it refers to 3 Mile Island. Suddenly, everything connects in her mind. Richard isn't planning more murders. He wants to destroy the nuclear plant and wipe out the entire city. The horrifying realization changes the entire movie because now the danger becomes massive. Richard forces Bill into the nuclear facility while secretly keeping Bill's wife hostage inside the car. Once inside, Richard kills multiple guards using grenades and gunfire before dragging Bill into the control room. There he forces Bill to activate dangerous systems inside the plant while holding him at gunpoint. Bill obeys only to protect his wife. After the activation, Richard shoots him anyway. Then he reveals bombs strapped across his entire body. He plans to destroy himself along with the facility. Jane rushes to the plant and warns security that disaster is about to happen. At first they don't believe her, but then alarms begin sounding throughout the facility. Guards enter with Jane and discover dead bodies everywhere. Inside the control room, Richard prepares to detonate the bombs. The guard want to negotiate with him, but Jane knows talking won't work. Richard wants destruction more than survival. A guard tells Jane there's an upper window overlooking the control room. Without hesitation, she climbs up with a sniper rifle and fires through the bulletproof glass. She shoots Richard in the legs, trying to stop him, but even wounded, he reaches for the detonator. Jane immediately shoots his hand before firing a final shot directly into his head. Richard collapses dead at last. But one grenade is still active inside the room, meaning the entire city could still explode. In the final seconds, the guards finally force the doors open and deactivate the system just before catastrophe strikes. The city is saved. The film then jumps to a post-credit scene, revealing one final disturbing twist. On the day Jane supposedly killed Richard, he actually survived. Though critically wounded, he remained alive and was secretly transferred in a maximum security prison. Jane later learns the truth and becomes deeply unsettled, because she knows monsters like Richard never truly stop. Even though the court has locked him away, she constantly fears he could someday escape and begin killing again. The movie ends on that dark thought, giving the story a deliberately uneasy ending instead of a comforting one.